Thank you, Abby, and hello, everyone. Um, so before we actually dive into the details of what this is all about today, I just wanted to do a little bit of reflection and think about how we live today in the current world with like all the smartphones and tablets and increasingly number of products in the screen, sorry, in the shelf. Everywhere where you go, you're bombarded with messages. Brands are a lot more aggressive, and if you're not even in the grocery store, will they try to reach you at home when you're behind your computer or just playing on your phone or trying to text? Like today the world is very different from 5 years or 10 years ago. And basically to summarize it in one word, is a lot more crowded and people get bombarded with a lot more messages than they ever used to before. And of course, this creates a completely new competitive context in which the brands today have to operate. And this, of course, didn't go unnoticed with many of our clients and ourselves included, of course. And what we started seeing is that this started probably for some clients a couple of years ago, for some very recent, but we started getting calls from our clients that said, hey, we're getting a lot of pressure from the top, from the CMO or like other marketing executives at the client side that said, hey, today we need to be a lot more aggressive in our messaging. We need to have more hard-hitting claims. We need to have comparative claims and really hammer down how we're different and better than other people because competition is so intense. And this, of course, was a very interesting question that we had because we at the time had already worked on quite a bit of message tests. We've seen thousands of messages at the time already, and one of the things we always noticed is that actually these really hard-hitting comparative claims were not necessarily ones that were doing so well in testing and in terms of performance. So this posed a very interesting question, and something that we've been working on for a long time now. And today in this webinar, we'd like to share our experiences with this question. Is this really the right way to go about these things, about how to compete in this new crowded marketplace? Or are there maybe other ways that are even more successful? And is this considered more of a myth than a truth, right? So this is what we're going to talk about today. And to really answer that question, I would like to start with even posing a more simple question, a very fundamental question, and that is like, how do people actually, what's the fundamental reason consumers buy products to begin with, right? And this is very basic, and all of you know the answer to this, and it is simply because it addresses a certain need or aspiration that the consumers have, right? So people buy products with a purpose, and the purpose is to address a need or to fulfill an aspiration. And here are just a couple of random examples. For example, you buy a salad dressing because it makes your salad tastier. You buy a shaving product because it gives you a smoother skin, or you buy a disinfecting wipe, as the name says it, to disinfect surfaces. There's really no surprise here, but we're building up to a bigger point along the way, right? So let's just zoom into one of these categories. Let's take a very common category, cleaning. In cleaning, people want to clean stuff. Whether it's a kitchen, a bathroom, a floor, clothing, it doesn't really matter, right? But cleaning is the primary benefit for most people that are engaged in this category. And now consider a situation where there's three products, A, B, and C, and the first product cleans well, the second product cleans better, and the third product cleans best. And this is how the consumer has remembered it from all the information the consumer has gathered in its lifetime up to that moment. And all else being equal, price or anything else, obviously to the consumer, option number C will have the highest perceived value because it best addresses the fundamental need why they buy the product to begin with, which is to get cleaner clothes or floors or whatever it is, right? And so to no surprise, the consumer choice would be product C. And as you can see from this very simple example, in the end, to consumer, it's all about relativity, right? From what product do they think they can extract the most value? What product does, are they able to get the most benefits that they're looking for? And whatever that one is the one that they're going to go for, all else being equal. So thinking about this, it makes perfect sense, right? How these executives say, hey, we really need to position ourselves directly against these alternatives and show the consumer how much more value they can get out of using our products versus using competitive products. Because in that way, the perceived value is higher and they will choose us as a result. Makes a lot of sense, that reasoning, but we're trying to challenge that notion and really critically see if it's really that simple. To start that analysis, we first would like to look at the basically the positive sides, right? Because there's a lot of benefits to these brand comparisons, these brand statements. And of course, the most power lies in the fact that you can use a more established brand to leverage positive associations that people have with that brand, and basically have those associations be transferred to your brand that doesn't have those positive associations yet, because the brand equity is lower for one reason or the other. And the two common applications of this are, of course, for new entrants entering a category. They have no equity, no credibility, so using a brand comparison towards a statement, towards a brand that is already more established, can help build that credibility when you enter a market. But another way that this is very often used is that it can help overcome specific barriers that people have to purchase. And to illustrate this, because this is a bit more of a difficult concept, consider a product that competes on price. There's a lot of products that, of course, are in the value segment, and the big trigger for people to buy those products is a lower price point. They just spend less money, so that's very attractive. But with a lower price point, automatically come certain concerns, and most of those concerns are related to the quality. If it's cheap, can the product deliver, right? So what certain brands do very successfully, think of a brand in the American market like Suave, has built great success by competing at a lower price point, but then also using certain benchmarks, certain comparative claims to more established brands in the market to show the consumer that while it's cheap, they will still get the same level of quality or a similar or acceptable level of quality from the product. In that way, they overcome the barriers that people have. The trigger can come through and they will convert somebody to purchase. And that's another application of when direct brand comparisons can be very powerful and when they can work. Doesn't mean they always work, but they can work, right? And history has proven that, and that's something we definitely recognize, and that's where we start our review. But there's a flip side to things, right? And the flip side is that very often people don't really like direct comparisons. Just like in your personal life, you don't like it when a friend or a colleague brags about themselves or talks trash, excuse me for the word, about somebody else. Like this type of bashing is often judged negatively, both in like private life, but also there's no different as the way that the consumer looks as a brand. They also look at that as a more negative thing than a positive thing. Second of all, it can remove the focus from the key benefit. And what we mean with this is that, in your drive and in your search, you're finding something to the point of differentiation, a benefit, an area, or a little thing that you're really better at than your competitors, and you want to communicate that, focus on that, you can get lost, and you can end up in a situation where you're comparing yourself on the basis of much less relevant things than actually the reasons, the benefits that consumer buy the product to begin with, because basically there's no point of differentiation there, so you have searched on and found something less relevant and compare yourself on the basis of that. That's of course a very risky situation, because now you move away from what we discussed early on in this talk, the reason why people buy the product to start with. And third, it can undermine a brand's credibility, and quite simply because sometimes the claims made, the comparisons made are unrealistic, but at the same time, this goes to the notion of confidence. The most confident people don't necessarily feel the drive to continue to compare themselves to others. They don't need to prove themselves. They're established, and they can, be very strong intrinsically and not necessarily have to continue to look at other people and say that they're better, because they know that they're better, and as such, for brands applies the same thing. So this raises a question, right? Because of course, there's good things to these comparisons, but there's like negative side effects, as you want to call them, like that. So this raises the question, like, how can we still establish the sense of superior value without these side effects? And the answer to this question lies in the phrase "consumer perception is reality." This is a rather abstract statement, so we would like to explain this a little bit more through a simple example. On this page, we are in the world of bar soap, and you're looking for a bar soap that has high moisturizing properties, because you like to get a very soft skin. So you're looking for a bar soap that moisturizes really well, and you're faced with a choice between two products, and you don't know anything about the products other than these two messages. And the first one is 10 times more moisturizers, and the other one is a quarter moisturizing cream. We would now like to do a little poll, a little quiz with you. So if you can choose which of these two to you means or things, that which bar soap would you choose, which bar soap would moisturize better in your opinion. So if you could please vote, then we can review those in a little bit, and then Right. So this question we have posed to many people, not just you, and what we see time and time again also here is that the 10 times more moisturizer for the majority of people, not all people, is the one that actually is considered to be a better moisturizing product. But if we actually see what brands belong to this, is that, oh sorry, the wrong side. What we see is that the first one belongs to Olay, and the second one belongs to Dove. People that know these brands, first of all, these are both very good brands, but people that know the brands know that, in fact, maybe Dove might actually be at least equal in terms of its moisturizing properties than Olay, and perhaps maybe even better. But that doesn't really matter, because most people think that Olay, because of the claim, and just purely looking at the claim, the message is actually the one that delivers more moisturization. In other words, that's the one where they get more benefit that they're looking for. So that is the one that they will choose, all else being equal. And here, of course, we ignore brand effects and all of that, because we really try to understand messaging by isolating the message itself. And that's what it's all about. It's all about perceived value. How do people perceive it? And that's how they will choose. That's what they will choose, the one with the highest perceived value, independent of whether that actually is the truth or not, right? So, how can we do this? This is one example, and there are certain principles behind this that can explain that, and that's what we're going to address next. So, here's 3 principles. We talk through these one by one, and address this. And these principles are not just made up, us like coming up with some random things. Like, these are based on basically hundreds of studies that we have leveraged to look at, the key principles, like meta-analyses on these studies, that help us explain why certain messages do better than others. And of course, we use our backgrounds in marketing and common sense and conversations with clients also to further develop these principles. But the 3 principles are as follows. Always focus on the key benefit, make your promise tangible, and creatively define your benchmark. What does this mean? So let's go into these one by one. The first one is always focus on the key benefit. This is very much related to how we started the webinar, because we purposely started there because we wanted to remind everybody that every communication starts with addressing the key reasons, the things that really matter to the consumer. And in our search for differentiation and in our search for creativity, we often forget this. I remember, one of the first studies I ever worked on in communication was with a huge margarine brand, and the brand director thought he had the killer claim that was going to win the entire test, and it was the claim was butter reimagined. And of course, there was already some skepticism from his colleagues, but he insisted that it had to go into the test, and obviously it ended up at the bottom. And the reason was because consumers had no clue what they were going to get out of the product. They had no idea what it would mean to them, right? So it addressed none of the benefits. It was very creative, and it was a good tagline maybe, or for creative execution, but it didn't focus on what really matters to the people, so the people couldn't connect with it, and as a result, they had to, they of course moved on to other products. Right, so this is where it all starts, but it's not as easy, but it's a very good reminder. This is the most important fundamental. Second, and this goes a little deeper, is like, okay, we have defined what benefits we're talking about, but what really makes or breaks the claim or a message is how you talk about those benefits. And the absolutely most critical thing is to be very descriptive in how you do so. And you can be descriptive in many ways. You can use graphics like Verizon. You can use words. You can use numbers. But in the end, it all boils down to the same thing. Being specific just allows you to better envision, to better see and envision what you're going to get out of the product. If you describe things, for example, let's take the last example. This is for Dove actually, and it says softer, smoother skin after one shower. A person that reads this knows exactly, has this mental picture in his head. It's like, okay, I walk into the shower, I walk out of the shower, and I have smoother skin. And that's exactly what they want. So the brand, this message does a great job at creating that mental image in that consumer's mind that they can relate to in that picture that actually matches the picture of their need or aspiration that they have. And because of that match, they will be more likely to buy the product as a result, right? So being descriptive helps consumers relate to it, helps consumers link what you have to offer to what they are looking for. Third, and this goes back to the Olay example before, be creative in defining your benchmark. Bashing other brands is very often a risky thing, especially for established brands, because they have a lot to lose and not so much to gain from it. But so what does a really established brand, a successful brand like Olay do? They still use a comparison, but they use a clever comparison. They don't say, they never meant 10 times more moisturizers than Dove. What they actually said was 10 times more moisturizers than regular soap. And this, is like in a small asterisk at the back of the package usually. But what they did is they pick a neutral benchmark, also a benchmark that's very easy for them to beat with big numbers. They compare it to that, and that creates a sense of superiority to everybody that reads that. And this sense of superiority will unconsciously transfer in the mind of the consumer to other brands. So while they never claim that they're better than Dove, it still lets people to believe that they're better than Dove, because now they suddenly have this sense of superiority associated with this brand. And again, this is not for every consumer the case, but for definitely the majority of people. And there's other ways you can do this. Another example helps you remove 2 times more dirt and makeup. And then you look at the back of pack, and it basically says versus basic cleansing, which I would assume means just throwing some water in your face, right? But again, a clever way of getting that sense of superiority across without all the backlash, negative backlash of bringing in other brands. What we've noticed here is that a lot of the benefits that we've been describing so far are very very objective and functional in nature. And we didn't talk much about experiential benefits. And that's because a lot of these more hard-hitting, like claims or like the principles that we just described, are actually much better suited for these functional benefits than for experiential benefits, because there's a lot more subjectivity related to experiential benefits, and consumers don't take anything for granted. If you say tastes better than X or this or that, people will always say, maybe for me it's different, I would like to try it first, etc. So this creates a challenge for a large number of categories. And so how do we deal with that? What do we do if your primary benefit is experiential? And the biggest experiential benefit that, of course, we work in, and the biggest category is food, where taste plays an enormous role, right? So that's the last part of this webinar, and we would like to talk a little bit about it. We don't go into too much detail. It's an entirely new body of work that we can talk about for a long time, and we're happy to share more information on it. But just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of it, to also see how you can basically get to the superior value when we're dealing with benefits, experiential benefits like taste. And then the first thing that we have to realize is that it is not something you can claim, right? Because it's subjective. There's nothing you can prove in a lab or anything like that. It depends on the taste buds of a person, so you can't really claim superior taste, but it is definitely something you can show. And what do we mean with that? Again, we have defined a couple of principles, and we don't go in the same level of detail as we've done before, but this is just to give you a flavor of it. And the first thing to do is to use very, very compelling taste descriptors. And this, you could kind of relate back to being specific, the principle about being specific, because, by using certain words that people can relate to, like think of fresh, creamy, flavorful, pure, delicious. These are all things that people associate with a positive taste, and it will help people to create that mental image and bring that product experience to life. So, like compelling taste descriptors are a very powerful way of doing that. Second of all, it's important to focus on the quality or the origin of the ingredients and not the process. We've worked with big brands that try to differentiate themselves in beverage or food categories by focusing on their superior harvesting, manufacturing, or packaging processes, because that's where they have the edge, and that's what made their products good. But to the consumer, it turns out that doesn't really mean that much. They have a hard time laddering up these process-related things to what ultimately matters to them, which is a great tasting product. So instead of the process, we recommend to focus on the actual ingredients, because the ingredients are what defines the flavor in the end, and that's a very easy ladder that consumer can do. Quality, pure, simple, organic ingredients will deliver a tastier product. That's how unconsciously things ladder up very quickly in the mind of the consumer. And also origin, the same thing. Certain regions are known for quality products. Chocolate from Belgium, wine from France, cheese from Holland. I have to put it in because I'm from Holland, but so like locally grown stuff is also often perceived as better quality. So it's again a very powerful way of laddering up to what ultimately matters taste. And lastly, using using key visuals, using appealing images. People don't think in words, people think in images, and if you have a very powerful image that brings that taste experience to life, really helps support whatever message you have. And this basically brings us to the last page, where we have an overview of the 6 principles. The first one, more functional, objective things, and the second at the bottom talks more about talks more about experiential benefits and what to do there. And if we look at this, maybe at a very high level, it all boils down to the same thing. whether it's the top or the bottom, we try to, either by focusing on the key benefits and describing that in a super descriptive way, or using these compelling case descriptors or origin and using these images, what in the end a very successful messaging communication does is that it creates a very vivid, powerful image in the consumer mind that matches the image of the product experience that they are looking for, aspiring to. And once you can do that very successfully, that's when you will have the best chance of success for your brand. And that's where I would like to end it for today. And we have a lot more information, of course, to share if you're interested. And I would like to now give the word back to Abby, who will be happy that I stayed within time. Almost.
Yes, very nice. Thank you. Yeah, and I think we have a few questions here. You can also still fill in some more if you have any. We're just going to take one because now we're close to our ending time. But someone here asked, are these kind of claims workshops that you do? Is this something that you also do? You can come in and give information about.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I mean, what we tend to do is, of course, this information is not just valuable for the consumer insights people that are usually our clients, but what they often do is invite us in and basically put us in front of the rest of the insights people or the brand people themselves and share our experiences and principles to basically create a bit of awareness and start a thought process internally to how to create better messages. So, we can definitely do that. We've done that a lot for many of the bigger companies, and we'd be happy to do that. We can also share certain decks for internal circulation. It really depends on what suits your needs best.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, if you can go to the next slide, then we can give people some contact details. Feel free to reach out to Paul or to reach out to myself if you have more questions about the session. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to send around the slides and a recording of today's session for you, so you can feel free to share it with your colleagues. And you can also visit skimgroup.com/webinars to sign up there for updates on our monthly sessions. So we already have some topics coming in January and February, and that way we can keep you informed. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and close off. Enjoy the rest of your day. And on behalf of Paul and myself, we thank you and look forward to hearing from you soon.